Hello and welcome to the stream. This is going to be a very casual read through of chapter 3 of the 5th edition D&D Dungeon Master's Guide. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to I haven't played D&D in a while, and before I throw the system out and just go and play Cortex Prime forever or something else, I want to make sure that I've nailed down my D&D campaign creation technique once and for all. And that involves a lot of different components that I've pulled together through the years. And I'm going to be doing a stream later this before the end of the year, maybe, about going through and creating a campaign that way. But before I do that, because it is so heavily reliant on the instructions in the book, I just feel like I need to reread this chapter at least to remember what parts of the book I'll have to be referencing live during that stream. So this is just sort of a way of separating that work out from this future stream. You might call it a mise en place. A French word meaning, I don't know, separate into, I don't know. Okay, so let's talk about creating adventures. I know the way this chapter is organized is you have a section on types of adventures. Off the top of my head, I usually focus on location based adventures or event based adventures. And this is one of the questions I haven't actually answered for myself, is which of these types are most appropriate for my um, preparation style. I've done both, but I can't remember. It all gets sort of mixed together. So that's one question I'm going to want to answer in this hour. I know there's a section, there are other sections, by the way, on intrigue and mystery. And those are, I think, so intrigue is event based, mystery is event based, right? So they're additional framing and ways to look at event based adventures. And that's perfectly good. So, a complication complications is another section in this chapter, but I don't remember at all what its purpose is. So I'm going to ignore it. Well, maybe I won't. Quandaries, twists. I'll have to refresh on it. Okay. And then encounters is the majority of this chapter. What is it? 5 pages, 6 pages. There's stuff in here about uh, the adventuring day and modifying the encounter difficulty. I think this is where we get, XP thresholds, encounter difficulty, calculating the XP sum. I'm not very interested in this because having read it once, and I I use web-based adventure calculators at this point in my dungeon mastering career. So I don't worry about. So this is the largest section of the book, and I'm going to be needing very little of it. Stuff like here about fun combat encounters, that's important. I have stuff like that. I mean that will come up. But it's just this whole page on difficulty, and it is not. The adventuring day I do have questions about. Actually, this is sort of a major question, um, because I think that the way that I design adventure campaigns, I, I'm not sure if I will be separating the rooms, quote unquote, the rooms of a dungeon, uh, whether they're actually going to be literal rooms connected by literal corridors, right? This is too small a deck, right? Literal rooms connected by literal corridors, or if they're going to be, you know, uh, location sites separated by many miles and days of journeying. Because one of the things that I like doing is building a campaign that zooms out and involves a lot of travel. But if I'm not going to then multiply my prep time by a factor of 1,000,000, the adventuring sites themselves, I hesitate to call them dungeons, become more, they become simpler. So you may run into a shrine on a mountainside instead of a full temple. I can't draw a shrine. Okay, so that sort of thing. I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether or not encounters per day make sense. Um, there are modified rules, and why not? I'll just grab them. 30 seconds. So I am a fan of this supplement, Gippy Glyphs, Darker Dungeons, and there are rules in here for feature changes. I think that's at page. It's like part on your character. No, modes of play. Yes. So this is a bunch of rule modifications for 5th edition, including rest and downtime. Wait a minute. What am I saying? Wait a minute. What am I saying? This is the reason I want to reread this book, because I'm fairly certain that it's the 5th edition. It's actually the DMG that has rest variants. God, I always forget this, and I feel like I'm so ready to chide others for going to supplements when epic heroism, gritty realism. This variant uses a short rest of 8 hours and a long rest of 7 days. 7 days for a long rest. That might be, right, timescales or rest variants. Rest variant gritty. might need to introduce the gritty realism rest variant if a single adventure, a 5 encounter adventure, takes place over several miles. One encounter, the entire the castle being one encounter, rather than a series of rooms. I have run campaigns that went from room to room in a massive castle, and that's just not. I'm not sure if that's how I run things anymore. When I designed that campaign, I was just stealing the layout from Baldur's Gate, some castle at Baldur's Gate. But I don't think I would do that now if I'm going to build a thing from scratch. So, okay. Random encounters. Yeah, I have no idea how to fit random encounters into my campaign style. I think I guess they might be location based. It isn't going to be a hex crawl, right? It's going to be a point crawl. So how do you have random encounters on a point crawl? Is it just as you're, in your travel time, you roll to determine whether or not you encounter combat traveling? I don't know. The other thing is when you're there, there's going to be a lot less. I don't do mapped movement where you move 30 feet and then roll for an encounter. It's not a dungeon crawl. It's not a hex crawl. Could be a hex crawl. I'm not sure. So, okay, random encounters. Great. So those are the sections. That's what we're going to go over. And those are our big questions, right? What is the time scale? What type of adventure should we follow? What instructions set should we follow? And how do we fit random encounters into my outline, right? My sort of template. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, location versus event. So creating rewarding adventures is expressive. They're stories. You want a credible threat, familiar tropes, a clear focus on the present. A little bit of history might be needed. Right, so generally no lore dumps. Good. Great. Yeah, and I have blocked out this I just added, right? As I started coming to the idea of this next stream on planning a campaign live, I added this page because I didn't have a matrix template yet. And when I had it printed out, I realized I had a blank page. And because I tend to over-prepare, I added 2 things here. One, a historical timeline. Now, that section, I'm looking for something that's not here. That section is actually based off of a different game. So, what is this game? Is this the wrong? This is some world. Empty binder components. Good job. Okay, so these were like pre-gen cities that I thought would be handy to have in the binder. These are empty index card holders that I can put items and things in there. We might do that. We might do that. We might do that. Not today. This is just DM screen stuff. Okay. What is in here? Okay, this is just empty binder components. This is... Okay, finally. Character sheets. Here we go. Okay. That. This is a tutorial on climate modeling, which definitely not going to come up in the next stream. That would be ridiculous. It's ridiculous that I even printed this out, but it's really fun. I mean, the idea of keeping a climate modeling tutorial in your DM binder. Though you might do it more than once. Oh, this is fun. Okay, so yeah, this is... Here we go. I mean, I got these binders out because I was looking for a sheet that I found, but now I'm getting distracted. That's okay. Part of the purpose of this stream is to just expose my own idiosyncrasies so that players can familiarize themselves with the broad range of ways of participating in the hobby. So this is cool. This is very cool. Not gonna need it right now. Might need it later because actually, there is another question. Which I haven't answered, which is, how do I draw maps? I've done it a million different ways. I'm not happy. I don't have a system. I haven't settled on anything that I'm happy with. We're not going to answer that question today, I don't think. But what we might answer the question of is, what does a clear focus on the present mean? D&D is a great... One of the main tropes in D&D is a concept of deep time, and deep history, and post-apocalyptic settings. The world having once been, right? Core assumptions. Gods oversee the world. Much of the world is untamed. The world is ancient. So empires rise and fall, leaving few places that have not been touched by imperial grandeur or decay. Ancient civilizations and their knowledge survive in legends and ruins. So that is a core assumption of your campaign world. And yet, here in that's chapter 1, page 1. Here in chapter 3, they're telling us, let the history be evident in the present situation. So we want to care about what the bad guys are up to now. I have historically generated the history of my world by playing games of Microscope, either with the players who will join or with a different group of players in order to surprise my PCs. The way that Microscope works is you take turns adding elements of history at different levels of zoom. So, for example, you might have a period called the Bronze Age, followed by a period called the Medieval Age, followed by a period called the Space Age. And you're looking at 10,000 years of history. Um, 2,000 years of history. Well, it's your world. And then underneath that, you have, different things like the sack of Rome. This is not historically accurate. And that is an event from 1 hour, 1 day to 1 week's worth of time. And that goes underneath that. And then likewise, you fill out. So you have a series of events all spaced and tied to each other across a massive series of time periods, a massive historical context, deep historical context for the rise and fall of many empires and other factions. So I wanted to approximate this with a template historical timeline that will give, I don't know how well you can see this, but that will give, yes, I deliberately made all of the prompts in here very faint. Not to make them difficult to see on camera, but to make them invisible after you've written your answers in there. So wow. One of these fields is labeled focus, and I have no idea what I meant by that. But what you have here are 2 events per age. So the idea would be you come up with your Bronze Age, your Medieval Age, your Space Age, or your New Empire, or whatever, and you write in the 2 defining, 3, yes. You write in the 3 defining events of each age, at least in the realm of your adventuring region. This looks to me like a difficult creative exercise. Microscope makes it easy. I'm not sure if there is a 15-minute condensed Microscope light set of actions, but I would be looking for that. I would be trying that. So that's an open question for the next stream. Okay, so Heroes Who Matter, something for all player types, surprises. We're nearly halfway through the hour, and we're only halfway through the first page, so I'm just going to change the pace up here. Those are all of the cliches, etc. that we need. Adventures need beginnings, middle, and endings. That's perfectly fine. My adventures will have something else. They'll have 5x5 campaign, matrix. You can't see, but written down the side here, it says Guardian Puzzle, Red Herring Climax, Plot Twist. These being the 5 rooms of a 5-room dungeon. That is an adequate arc for me. Okay, adventure types. Let's talk about location and event adventure types. A location-based adventure. Okay, so this is great, right? I love the structure of this chapter. To me, the most valuable element on this design element on this page is that there 1 dot. Okay, 1. Party goals. So as we go through and create an adventure, which we are not doing today, we're just reading through this. It's a simple checklist. Fill in the blanks. And once you do that, you end up with a very confusing, high level, but very promising and evocative scribbled, lined, spiral bound page. This is the beauty of the book, but it's also very limited because I can't run a game off of this page of notes. Let's go through it. So, identify the party's goals. Well, we're trying to discover the nature, right? Discover the nature of a phenomenon, of a nature and origin of a location or phenomenon. Or phenomenon. When I hear that, I think of a geyser. So that's our first. That just happened. That's a dungeon goal or wilderness goal. So those are alternatives. So we don't need two. So identify important NPCs. So we'll need a villain such as. Oh man, I don't have any dice here. Well, I have the wrong kind of dice. Let's just roll a couple of d6s. So 4, 5, 6. Great. Undead with any agenda. So undead is the villain. So there's some kind of geyser we need to understand the origin of. And there is some undead. Probably a vampire. Or a lit. It's not basic. And a couple of allies. Let's get our villain, ally. Okay, so villain. This is 2A. This is 2B. Ally. Okay, that's perfectly good. Then 3, flesh out the location details. So, Chapter 5 offers suggestions for creating and fleshing out adventure locations to establish important elements of a dungeon. Okay, so I see. So this is a location-based adventure, which means everything is going to take place within one day's journey. There will be no travel montage. All the locations within this location will be rooms, so to speak, of the dungeon. So if there's going to be some kind of geyser, I'm just picturing some kind of, erupting magical whatever. You gotta build a temple around it. There's some rune and carved stone. Maybe it's a portal to some other plane. That I've done this before. I've done this exact thing. Well, not the geyser part, but I've done everything around it. The temple with the portal. Okay. So this becomes a dungeon, and now we have to have. So then we can flesh out the location details, and that will end up looking like this. Why? Because that's what it's going to look like. We'll work that out. We'll work that out. Although really the way the 5-room dungeon works is it's kind of linear, right? So it could be like this. And there's some blockage here. In our case, this case, if it's a dungeon, that blockage could be a crumbled wall no a non-existent wall. Linear dungeons are um, awkward. Players understand that. I'm not good at dungeon. I should say I haven't focused on dungeon design. So maybe the location-based adventure is not hugely correct for me. But I'm also not totally opposed to the idea of a gate room followed by some kind of combat room followed by a trap. I mean a very shallow and a pile of gold. Right, a very shallow with a MacGuffin. MacGuffin has a ribbon on it. It's too small. A very shallow dungeon design that sits, it sits somewhere on the map. This is a castle. This is a cave. It's a mountain, right? And then you have this shrine here. And little floaty things. Okay, so it's shallow, but there are other things on the map. You make an entire adventure out of this. There's a vampire living. There's 5 rooms and a vampire. Okay. Again, I'm struggling to wrap my head around what scale I want to do. Okay, so then you find the ideal introduction. These are great. A stranger approaches the characters in a tavern and urges them toward. So what we're going to do when I create the stream, when I create the campaign, which I hope to stream live to keep me focused, is I'm going to take each of these. I'm going to take 5 of them. Not just 1. 5 of them. Or 4. And we're going to write out several adventures. We're going to outline several adventures, each of which is 5 rooms. And each of which is going to have 4 hooks. And each of those hooks we're going to plant in the other adventures. That way, everything gets really tangled up. Which is all I want is for my players to be completely overwhelmed and confused. And then what's great about that is I don't have to worry about being subtle or tricky. Once I've planned out this extremely complicated and confusing thing, then at the table I can just be transparent and obvious. I'm not worried that we're losing nuance or subtlety or that the game is too straightforward. I will just be able to say things like, yeah, we need someone to kill the dragon. And that will just be, and I don't have to be like, oh, our sheep have gone missing. Hint, hint. No, don't have to be dropping hints. I can be firing them. I can be firing the hints out of a cannon to compensate for how confusing the campaign would otherwise be. And that's useful for me because I struggle with subtlety. So, okay. Consider the ideal climax. Yeah, consider it. A portal opens to another plane of existence. That's perfectly appropriate. Yeah, we'll take it. Plan. Okay, then you plan encounters. Yeah. Well, I will then, at this point, go to the calculator. Well, I will then, at that point, go to the adventure template and take the calculator. Here's one encounter. You got sight, sound, smell, temperature, and textures. Textures. The ground is hard. The ground is slick and moist and with fungus. Or spongy with fungus. Stat blocks for creatures. Hit points. We'll just Fill that out. One for each one of those squares we talked about earlier. Next encounter. Fill it out. Next encounter. Fill it out. Okay, so the question remains how to fit. No, not random encounters, not time scales, but encounter, and don't even get me started on level appropriate. That is a huge, huge flaw in this entire concept of planning a campaign ahead of time. This is why you should not do it. Do not do this. Do not do what I am about to do, which is plan a campaign ahead of time. It is too much work. The players are going to go off the rails, or even if they stay on the rails, they will then have higher and higher XP, higher levels, and all of your planned out, statted out encounters will go stale. Unless we do something very sophisticated, which I haven't thought out yet, but I think might be something weird like, we'll call this entire row level 1, this entire column level 1. We don't have to talk about levels. We can call that level, but we can talk about what is it, like a scale of renown, factions, languages, atmosphere, your world, optimizing, type master of world. So let's see. Problem solving, storytelling, your world, loose pantheons, human rights. It is funny that gods is like the first chapter. It's really not that important. Factions are underused. Waterdeep Dragon Heist has a great faction implementation. Start small. Local region. This is funny. This is creating a campaign. I'm going to ignore that. Gosh, maybe I shouldn't. I always create a home base. That is not part of my template. Fine. Yeah, home base, local region, craft a starting adventure. Fine. I probably should put those in the template if that's because I do it. Home base, local region. Fine. Yeah. It should be acknowledged. It does not go with that. But what I'm looking for is involving the characters. No, I think you I'm looking for the scales of power. There are just 3 blocks. Here we go. Tiers. Tiers of play. Tiers of play. Local heroes to level 4. Heroes of the realm. Masters of the realm. Masters of the world. So, if you want to build a campaign that takes them from 1 to 20, then you can consider tiers of play. So let's consider what it would be like to consider tiers of play with local heroes at this level, right? Across and down. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then Masters of the World, Masters of the Realm, and Heroes of the Realm. So what's fun about this is you have an adventure that starts at level 1. Then the next step is at level 5. So they will solve the riddle at the gate, and then face a beholder. I don't know what level beholder is. Which will, in the next room, which will totally throw them off. They accomplish that, and the next room is at level 11, appropriate. And then the last room, they solve that, and it's 17. Which I love. I like that. So then they have an adventure that you can just do the entire adventure within the first 4 levels. Etc., etc. I like that. I'm glad that yeah, I'm happy with this. We might, if we were feeling, generous. Well, it's a question of what do you want to focus on? Where do you want most of the gameplay to be? How many of these adventures is it going to take to go up a level? I don't know. I don't want to do that math. I don't care. I don't care. This is good and broad and nice. Great. So, when we get to encounters, when we get out of types of adventures, we will plan encounters based on those tiers of play. Written that down here, so you all keep a log of the subjects we've discussed. So, plan encounters. Okay, so that's a location-based adventure. I'm thinking an event-based adventure is going to be more appropriate. Because you start with the villain. We have a table for that. Start with the villain. Do we not have a table for that? Very confused. Oh, it's right here. Good old Faye. Some Faye. Mysterious goal. Yeah, I mean, what do Faye even like? I don't know. They're probably throwing a party. And you know what that means? That means they need decorations. And they need guests. And they need food. And those are all going to be sick and twisted, weird, surreal, bizarre things that they take from the material plane. Okay. Which is an idea that I stole from, I believe it was a RPG called Dreamland that I played at Kubla Khan. Where you played emissaries of the Fairy Queen planning a party. Okay. Or provisioning a party. They are a villain. This is very disruptive to the economy. Start with the villain, determine their actions. I feel like we almost sort of just did that, but we can roll a d6 to get step by step. So they're going to do these things in order. And they come to, okay, right, there's a description here. Step by step means they carry out a specific set of actions in a particular sequence. So, first, they acquire the decorations, because these don't expire. Then they send the invitations. Then they gather the food. 1, 2, 3. So, or maybe we can swap 2 and 3 actually, and we'll do mise en place. So first they're stealing objects, then they're stealing animals and plants, and then they're kidnapping people. This is what the Fae do. They kidnap people to make them dance. This is classic Raven King from um, those British magician guys and their thing. Okay. Determining the party's goals. 3. So that's step 2. So 3. Event-based goals. So this is good, right? I mean, the answer here is you just disrupt the efforts, but you can't kill the Raven King. He's beyond you, vastly beyond you. Number 7, overthrow a tyrant. Okay, well, what you can do is you can establish an alternate body of ordnance. You can get another Fae alternative. You can go and talk to the fairy. Boy, I haven't read The Witchlight. And I don't need to. You have everything you need in the Dungeon Master's Guide. Fairy Council. What are they called? They're not called a council. They're called court. They're courtiers. So you're gonna foment a coup in the Fae Kingdom. Sounds like a pretty high level adventure. So maybe it's not the Raven King. Maybe it's, the Raven Baron or some lower level courtier of his own. And you can talk to his allies and okay, so that's what we're going to do, right? We're going to overthrow this tyrant. We can even have him established locally, right? So we take the Baron out of the Feywilds and we put him in our map, in our region, where he's sitting in a castle. So now he's more approachable. He's pulling in all of these supplies to throw his dastardly party. Identify important NPCs. Let's see. Allies, patrons. I do not have a place for allies and patrons in my template. Why is that? Well, because they don't show up in the encounter. They're not here. I don't need their stat block. They're giving quests, they're giving rewards, they're pointing out hints. What are allies even for? Where do I write this stuff down? Where would I even write this stuff down? Maybe I'd put it under a faction. Then they're just an emissary of a faction. This faction thing I threw in here because I had blank space. Not because I need it or use it. This faction is a hypothesis. This faction worksheet is maybe not necessary. So maybe I could replace that with villains. But, we're going to have 5 villains, and we're going to have 5 allies. And that could be easily 2 rows, villain, ally, for each adventure. Okay. So then, we get to that. So we get to that point we'll write out number 4, identify important NPCs. Number 5, identify the villain's reactions. So maybe we are talking about location-based adventures, because when you have a static 5-room dungeon like these, then the idea of a villain's reaction, which events arise how are they like? How are the for each event arising from those actions? How are the adventurers likely to react? And what can the villain do to compensate? So they recommend using a flowchart, but I recommend ignoring this paragraph completely because I don't know what to say. If you're going to plan your campaign out ahead of time, which don't do this. Don't do what I'm doing. You can't improvise as well. I mean, you're less flexible. You will have to go in and change. Some of these key locations might completely change. You might take one location and a kidnapping, and you might have to reassign it because if the PCs get wind of the plan to steal all the cows from the Marigold Dairy, well, they might go and they might set up a watch at the Marigold Dairy. They might set a trap. And that's awesome. You should definitely have the villain fall into that trap. At which point, the players have successfully, I would say, resolved the encounter at that location. So this is fine. You don't need... What's a reaction? Then what? They're going to steal cows from somewhere else? No, they're not. Because your players are making what's known as progress. And it's not that the villains are unresponsive. It's not that they're two-dimensional paper cutouts. It's that they don't have time. If you stop them from getting those cows at the dairy, they are going to fall back to their plan B, which was eat whatever they friggin' have at home. It won't be Marigold's magical golden milk cows. It's just going to be whatever they have. That's because not getting the cows is a setback. And your players, by accomplishing their goal, delivered the villain a setback. Congratulations. He doesn't need to react. He doesn't have time to react. This is you winning. I don't know. Detailed key locations. So at this point, we would go through and be like, all right, key locations. Well, they're going to do these things in order. They're going to do these things in order. They're going to steal some objects. So for a 5-room dungeon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So at this point, the key locations would be I don't know. This would be the king's treasury. I don't like that. I want to go with the bazaar. So they will just steal all the exciting, cool things at the local bazaar. Then they go to so marigolds, whatever, for the cows. Then they go, where do they steal the people from? I guess the village. Just steal the people from the village. That's less interesting than stealing them from a caravanserai. So what they're doing is they set up shop at a waypoint between municipalities. And I can only draw squares. These are castles. And here's the caravanserai, and the caravans, you can't see this because it's too small, the caravans come through, and they sleep, and what's happening is they're disappearing before they can get to the next town. And that doesn't start until these other things happen. So pass or fail, and it moves on to the next. Okay. So then we need a bazaar, we need a farm, and we need a caravanserai. And why do I say that? No reason. That was why? Because I have a book of maps and locations. That I was gonna that include a bazaar and a caravanserai. Okay. So yeah. Locations, introduction and climax. So then we will come to this portion. This portion where I've got a section here called hooks. So this is the adventure of, the stealing the throwing the party, provisioning the party, right? And so the hooks are going to be wherever those hooks were. Introductions, introductions, okay. Plan encounters, we'll do that the exact same way as the location. And so that's good. So we can do an event-based goal. It's an event-based adventure works fine. So we'll do a mix. Mysteries include a victim, and that makes it the event. I don't know what we then do with the victim. They're not an ally. We need an assortment of suspects who have the motive and the means and the opportunity. That's cool. I guess those suspects would become encounters, not necessarily combat encounters, but they could show up. They would show up in the encounter on the encounter page. I don't necessarily need a different template. So then the clues point to the identity of the villain. And the clues... Okay, so what we would do there is... I would write these down in the notebook, and then as we fill them in, it would go in here. Non-combat goal or skill challenge would be like, you either are uncovering a clue, for example, searching someone's desk or interrogating somebody, and the treasure would be the clue that you found. I would have to come up with those clues on the spiral-bound notebook, but again, it wouldn't necessarily require a different template. Intrigue involves many villains or no villain. I like no villain. Involves influence. We could make an intrigue. We could make an intrigue adventure out of our Feywild if we want to establish influence. If you want to track the party's influence with different factions, right? What we could do is we could establish 3 parties, sub-parties within the Fey. And if we can build... See, this is the hard part, right? I mean, this is where, I guess, it reveals... Again, don't do things this way, because I have to make a choice now. Am I going to design an adventure with the bazaar and the cows, marigold, and the village or the caravanserai, are we going to design an adventure where the players reactively intercept all of these activities? Or are we going to design an adventure where the players conversely, what is this? Don't know what that illustration is for. Where the players conversely go the other way and assume that there's some nebulous crime spree happening in the background while we sway different parties, right? In the bathhouse, in the courtroom, in the tavern, right? Where we then have encounters, intrigue, right? So this is sort of like the combat interception option. And this is the intrigue option. Now, ideally, right, we're not Marigold's Dairy here. That doesn't matter anymore. Or that doesn't matter in that position. This is our intrigue option. And this is our combat interception option, which is sort of more of a location style. So the brittleness of our templates it takes its choice away from the players, because we're going to decide one or the other. For the players might want to do both. Well, I only have one prepared, right? I will only have one of those prepared. We can we could prepare both, but they obviate one another in a way. Although I wonder if there isn't a way we could reset. Like have the intrigue overthrow the Fae. Well, okay. If we go and intercept and disrupt the party, right? Disrupt the party. Or the gala. Let's say gala to avoid name collisions. If we disrupt the gala, we might still overthrow the Raven Baron. But if we overthrow the Raven Baron, we then lose the opportunity to disrupt the gala. You see what I mean? We can't do both. So we have to choose which of these adventures we're going to outline. And that takes a choice away from the party. If they just want to stymie the hijinks, but we've designed the intrigue adventure, well, tough. What will we say? What will you say then when the party goes to the bazaar? They say we go to the bazaar, and you say okay, and you pull out your template, and you say, never mind. No, you say, well, what do you want to do next week? And then you come in here and you rewrite it. So, there you have it. That's sort of how this whole process works, right? Is you're going to flesh out the adventure down to the last detail. And then, as your players maneuver through it, why am I writing so light? I'm not going to use. As they maneuver through it, they smash it to pieces, and you rewrite everything. You rewrite everything. Or you just say, I don't have that prepared. There's a lot of content, you guys. Why don't we just get through the stuff I have? And next time, I'll focus more on that kind of thing. Okay, so framing events. Conflict. Framing events. Holy day. Yeah, I don't know what to do with this. It's nice. This is nice stuff. This is nice stuff. That's a general question for my campaign style, is like what to do with framing events. What is this even doing here? This is just a table. You can base an entire adventure on a framing event. They said no information about what to do with this. So framing events and also calendars. Calendars, I guess you just keep a calendar. I don't know. Time. Complications, honor, rescue, respect, quandary. Moral quandaries. Yeah, you can just throw those on there. I guess this would be per. Two important allies give conflicting directions. A character is forced to choose between player and a personal oath or code of honor. No, the players have no choice. They get to make no choices. What we have here are 5 railroads. Oh my goodness. Did I just confess to being the worst dungeon master of all time? We can build these in, but the question is at what scale? You pull in a quandary and you give them a choice, and those choices have no impact because they're just wandering through a funhouse, static funhouse. Unless you rewrite everything, which I don't have a process for. You just have to feel it out, I guess. Twists are great. So I think probably we might actually want to start with complications. We'll start from there. Start with complications and fit them in as we go along. Because otherwise, we just finished those adventures, I wouldn't want to go in and add a twist now. Just add it. Complete an adventure fulfills a prophecy or prevents the fulfillment of prophecy. Yeah. Side quests. Side quests are cool. I do want to do a whole page of factions and side quests, a la Dragon Heists. That's cool and fun, and those would just be one-off rooms. And then encounters we already talked about. Random encounters. I just triggering when they're off track and slowing down the game. Stop for a short rest. Undertaking a long, uneventful journey, or draw attention to themselves, and they should be keeping a low profile. Okay, so we just keep these handy. We just keep some random encounters handy. And we drop them on the players. Hopefully we have a battle map for that. One thing we didn't talk about today, and we won't talk about today, but maybe I will talk about in the future, is battle maps. And they discuss that here under detail key locations. They can be simpler and smaller than a dungeon complex or an expansive wilderness. They might be individual rooms where combat is likely to break out, such as a throne room, a guild headquarters. Yeah, I love that. I love that. I like that level of abstraction. And flesh out location details, chapter 5. So we won't talk about this today, but I do just want to remind myself that that random encounters have to happen somewhere. They have to happen on a map. They don't have to, but there is great value in random encounters happening on a map. So, yeah, something to think about. All right. Well, if you're still listening here, thanks for sticking with me and providing me with the motivation to think through my campaign creation technique. I might do one more of these on mapping. Well, I might do one more of these to answer some of the remaining questions that I have. Or I might just go ahead and try and speed run campaign outlining. But I don't know when that will be, so you just have to hit that little bell icon. Bing. Otherwise, you'll never know. All right, thanks a lot. Take care. Happy New Year. Oh, it's not. I mean, sorry, too early. Season's greetings.